am dubious about marijuana. States, can pass whatever laws they choose, but I'm not sure we're going to be a better, healthier nation that if we have marijuana being sold at every corner grocery store.
Hey, man. What? What's in this shit, man? Mostly Maui Wowie, man. Yeah?
These high school boys and girls are having a hop at the local soda fountain. Innocently, they dance. Innocent of a new and deadly menace lurking behind closed doors. Marijuana, the burning weed with its roots in hell.
You are listening to the Medical PotCast, a podcast publication, part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. The Medical PotCast is dedicated to pharmacists, healthcare professionals, and is devoted to delivering accurate, timely, cutting-edge information about medical marijuana. We will bring you the most up-to-date scientific, political, regulatory, financial, and interesting information not available on any other podcast program. Not since Silicon Valley and the technology boom have we seen the likes of any other industry that has grown this fast over a relatively short period of time. The medical marijuana industry is projected to hit the 30 billion mark in the next 5 years. The medical cannabis industry has the potential of helping billions of people around the globe, but at a significant social, economical, and political cost. Our goal is to answer some of your questions, plus heighten, enlighten, confuse, and frustrate you all at the same time. So fasten your seatbelts, keep your eyes on the road, and get ready for some fun. And now, here's your host, registered pharmacist, life student, and medical cannabis professional, Joseph Friedman.
Welcome to the Medical Podcast. This is Joseph Friedman, host, and I'm thrilled to have Mr. Jim Lucas on the line right now. And just a little bit of background. Mr. Lucas is a representative in the state of Indiana who is taking the charge to have Indiana become a medical cannabis state. So with that said, Jim, welcome to the Medical Podcast.
Good morning, Joseph. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Great. So I think let's just start off with, just telling us, the audience, a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about medical cannabis.
Okay. I'm just your average Jim. I'm somebody that, small business owner for 19 years, been married 23 years, 3 kids, 2 grandkids, Marine Corps veteran, somebody that just got fed up with politics here several years ago and decided to get involved. And I was on city council here in my hometown of Seymour for 5.5 years, and then got bit by the bug and ran for state office, and am currently serving my 3rd term as state representative for District 69. And I don't know if the listeners have aware of, the CBD issue that Indiana was faced with this past summer, where we had a hard time figuring out if it was legal or illegal. And that caught my interest. And so I started to investigate and educate myself on the CBD issue. And it was amazing that the more I learned, the more I educated myself on CBD and all of the incredible benefits of it, that took me into the cannabis part of it as well, because they are closely related. So I started studying, all the benefits of cannabis. And I've always been indifferent, not one way or the other. I lean more libertarian on the issues. But this was one of those that the more I learned about medical cannabis, the more I kept asking myself, why isn't Indiana doing this? And so I reached out, to further my education. I was fortunate enough to come in contact with some really knowledgeable people, yourself being one of them. It was nice meeting with you and some other people. IndyCan, I want to thank Bobby Jo Young. She's done tremendous things for me, and some other people. And the nice thing was, probably the highlight of my short but very intense learning curve was my trip to Illinois, that's where I first met you. And I got to tour the cultivation facility over there and a dispensary. That was very eye-opening to see that, yes, this can be done. It can be controlled, at the state level. And professionally, and, ensure quality and delivery of a great product. But this is something that I'm committed to moving forward, and I'm going to continue to push as hard as I can to bring the medical cannabis industry to great state of Indiana.
Wow, super introduction, Jim. I mean, it looks like you've certainly, done your homework, and based on the research you've done, how did you come about figuring out exactly how the legislative bill should look in Indiana? What are some of the requirements, that are important to you from that standpoint of how this program can roll out in the state of Indiana?
Well, again, leaning libertarian, obviously safety. We have to ensure a safe product, but we can't get overly regulated or restricted to the point that it's ridiculous, and we've driven the cost to the point where it's unaffordable. Because with the feds still having their heads stuck in the sand on this issue, and really not, it looks like they're coming our way, but not fast enough to my liking. This is a cash business, so we have to keep the product affordable to the end user, and make sure that they're able to get the product that they need. It's no good if we open up an industry and nobody can afford the product. But that's always been very important to me. But also let the markets work. As a politician, it really bothers me and upsets me that politicians think they know better than the market and the professionals, the people that are dealing in the issues, the provider and then the end user. So we just need to set up guidelines, keep it competitive, but let people come in and let the markets work. And I think it really is that simple.
Well, right. And I agree with you. I mean, we actually see, states that have been into this program, California and Colorado, where the prices have really come down over the past 10 or 12 years. But then you've got other states that are just coming on board, Illinois being one of them. I know Pennsylvania is one of them, where, prices are a little bit on the higher side. And, a lot of people just can't afford that. So that's, how do you plan on trying to have market forces drive supply and demand where the prices are competitive?
Well, the beautiful thing is Indiana, I believe there's 29 states out there already that have medical cannabis programs. So I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I'm in the lucky spot of being able to pick and choose, finding out from those states what's working, what's been tried, what isn't working. I don't have to start off where somebody, is leaving a position that's been a failure. That's not where I want to start. I want to start off in the positions that people are moving to because they're successful. And again, it's as simple as it sounds, the market. If I produce a piece of legislation that's highly restrictive and only lets, just a few people come in, then that way, they pretty much control the market. But I want to, people such as yourself, you have a lot of experience in this, and I would be foolish to not, listen to the people that have been doing this for years and have found what works and what doesn't work. And that's where I want to go with this.
And this looks like it's going to be a tremendous homegrown, pardon the pun, program in Indiana. Now, Indiana doesn't have a lot of experience with this. Is Indiana or is your legislation going to allow, people from other states, neighboring states who have experience to come in and actually participate?
Oh, absolutely. And like that's the market. For me to lock this up to Hoosiers only, that doesn't make sense because obviously not too many Hoosiers have experience at the professional level that it would take to keep supply met, the demand. So yes, I want to open it up to everybody throughout the country, even if around the world, if people want to bring their experience in, and as long as they meet the requirements that Hoosiers feel are necessary, why not? It doesn't make sense to restrict it right off the bat when we could be running, full steam ahead.
Now, Jim, you mentioned, you took an interest in this when CBD or some kind of program that allows CBD or cannabidiol to be dispensed in Indiana. What does that program? What did that program look like when it was first noticed by you, and what does that program look like now? Is there actually stores, CBD stores in Indiana, where people can walk in and purchase CBD products and get consultation on how to use them?
Oh, yes. And that's why it was a hot mess last summer, because we had the Attorney General saying it was illegal. We had the state officials going around confiscating product from stores. The governor had to issue not one, but two moratoriums, until the legislature's got it straightened out. And I submitted a hemp bill, which I thought was excellent. And so did the Indiana House of Representatives, because we voted it out of the House unanimously, which is extremely rare. And then we got it over to Senate, where it encountered problems. But basically what my legislation did, it not only did it recognize CBD as being a legal product, but it allowed Hoosier farmers to grow it and to grow the hemp plant. And it recognized that all hemp byproducts were legal. The fiber, the stalks, everything that we could possibly use of the hemp plant. And it allowed for the agricultural side to grow it. It allowed for the industrial side to come in and process it, make products out of it. And then even the CBD people, the end users, to get to your point, your question, Joseph, yes, we do have stores. I have several stores here in my hometown that are selling CBD products, and it's incredible. This is something people want. It's a safe product. We know that for a fact. And, Indiana likes to drag its feet on the issues. So that issue will be studied this summer, the production of hemp. But, at least we've got our foot in the door. So we're moving the ball forward a lot slower than what I'd like to see. But we're going to get there. And then same with medical cannabis. I had a bill that, last legislative session would have brought that to the state. I will be bringing both of those to the state again next year, and maybe even a few more surprises.
A few more surprises. I love your passion and confidence in this. So if I were to walk into a CBD store in Indiana, I'd be able to buy CBD products that come from the state of Indiana that are grown by hemp farmers there?
No, my legislation would have allowed that, but currently, Indiana, again, we're taking our time for whatever reason. We have to study it first, study it to death, and then when it's dead, we've got to push it around a little bit more and study it some more. But we're going to get there. Right now we're importing all of our CBD products from other states and vendors, when frustratingly we should be producing this ourselves. But for this year, we're able to sell it, so that's a good thing.
Well, that's great, and I agree. I mean, you gotta crawl before you can walk, and it sounds like this is exactly what's happening. So, tell us about the legislation for a full medical cannabis program in Indiana. I understand that in the last general session you did submit the legislation. What was the temperature of the General Assembly, and what was the conversation that you had?
Well, unbelievably, Indiana, a state that just did adopt Sunday sales for alcohol, which, brought us a little bit closer to the 21st century. I had the medical cannabis legislation, which would allow that whole industry to come to our state. And it was, again, simplicity. I like very simple bills, because the more convoluted and complex they get, the more confusing they get. So we want to keep it simple. But it basically, it allowed for the whole industry to spring up, from the cultivation facilities to dispensaries to my legislation even allowed the individual user to grow up to 6 plants. That seemed to be the sweet spot amongst the states that allow it. So I thought it was a great piece of legislation, but it amazingly, and this is what was, I think, is a good sign for Indiana. The House, on the House side, we voted unanimously to have a summer study on medical cannabis. And, to come from not even considering it just within the past year or two to voting unanimously in the House to study it, I think is tremendous progress. So that sent a very positive, favorable signal, for that issue. And I will continue to push it. I'm very active on social media. I'm here interviewing you, or being interviewed by you, I'm sorry. But, I'm trying to get out there as much as I can with the media and any avenue that I can use to promote this issue. And it's something I'm not going to give up on. I'm very passionate about it. I believe in it, and it's the right thing to do. When you learn about all the positive benefits, the significantly less side effects of compared to many prescription medications. I mean, it's such a blessing to have this available. Now, if we can just legislatively, make it available to people, that's the great challenge right there.
So how do you, and this sounds great, Jim, but how do you work it where, you've got, Governor Holcomb, and I guess the question is, how is he regarding, not only the CBD bill, but also a full-blown medical cannabis legislation in Indiana? Do you think he's on board, or is that going to be a problem? No. The governor vetoing it?
It's going to take a lot of work with our governor. I mean, I like Governor Holcomb. He's a great guy, and he's doing a lot of great things for our state. But there's just some issues that I disagree with him on, and this is one of them. But the thing that I have going for me is the people. This is something, when you talk to people, they're not only are they aware of it currently, but they're becoming more and more aware of it, and they're educating themselves on this as well. When you look at Indiana, we're surrounded by Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, I think Kentucky. They currently have medical cannabis programs. Kentucky's considering it very highly, but even if they don't go through with their medical cannabis program, Kentucky's one of the leading states in the nation for growing hemp. So here we are. We're an island of, just being behind the times. And this is an issue that when you ask the people about it, I mean, it overwhelmingly shows favorable and positive results. So, this is something Governor Holcomb, he might be against it personally, but, he's going to run a risk politically if he continues to ignore the will of the people. And that's probably one of the best assets I have is using the media to educate more and more people and have them become vocal and let their voices be heard.
Well, that's great information, Jim. And it seems like you've got a lockdown plan for this program to happen in Indiana. Now you'll have the product. Indiana will have cultivation centers, and it's all part of your legislation. How do you envision this is going to work on the dispensary side? I know in Illinois, there was no mandate for healthcare professionals. You've got a lot of beautiful dispensaries with patients walking in, but there is this gap where, someone behind the counter will say, well, yeah, man, this stuff's really dank. I've got some other friends who just say it really works for their pain. What are you envisioning as far as the kinds of people that are going to be working in dispensaries?
Well, I want to keep it professional. I mean, that's the main thing, because we are dealing with a product that people put into their bodies. So we have to be aware of that. Fighting the stigma and the ignorance that surrounds, cannabis, that's a huge challenge. But again, as I referenced earlier, 29 other states are doing this. So I plan on this summer, I'm going to go on several educational trips. I want to go around to different states and see what they're doing. And be able to pick and choose from best practices. And it's, we're not starting from square one. So I'm real excited about the possibilities that lay ahead of us and what we can do, what we can bring to Indiana. So it's possible. It's very possible. It's just educating myself on the best practices and making sure that we bring the good ones to Indiana and leave the bad ones out there where they are right now.
You're going to, be very knowledgeable about cannabis and its benefits for treating a myriad of healthcare diseases and symptoms of those diseases. But how do you plan on educating the healthcare professionals, the doctors that will probably be participating in this program with their patients. I mean, what's going to be the process for a patient to become a medical cannabis card holding patient?
Well, obviously, the nice thing is about this issue, having been out in the spotlight for more than a decade now, is there is so much professional knowledge already out there. And if I can bring this to Indiana, if I can convince the other legislators and the governor that, hey, this is the right thing to do, 60% of the states are doing this, and more are coming on board each day. Once they understand that and all the positive benefits of it, now, once people come to accept it and we can get it legislatively accepted, the floodgates will open. I mean, professionals such as yourself and others will come in and educate our doctors because they want to learn. They read, they've seen the studies, they've heard the anecdotal stories from people that have been helped by this, and not just a better quality of life, but a better quality of life through less side effects, less toxic side effects from many prescription drugs that they're taking. So it's a win-win on both sides of the coin. But once we can make that available to our citizens, I think it's just a very quick time before the doctors become educated. Obviously, we have to be careful. My legislation had it to where doctors would just make a recommendation that they believed that cannabis would be a benefit to the patient. They weren't prescribing anything. They were just issuing a recommendation. Well, from that recommendation, the patient would be able to obtain a state license, and then they could take that license to the dispensary. And I think that's where your true professionals are, your industry professionals, are the cultivation facility. They know what to, how to grow the plants, how to process them, in what manner, delivery vehicles. There's so many delivery vehicles out there. That was one of the things that caught me by surprise. The stigma is people think that, you have to go out in the alley by the tool shed and smoke a joint. That's simply not true.
One of the things, and I think, there's, you're doing your research, you're doing your traveling. Do you have any plans to go to Pennsylvania? And the reason why I asked that question is, I was just out there a couple of weeks ago, and Pennsylvania's program is about 6 weeks old today. They already have about 30,000 patients. I know dispensaries are getting inundated because the whole process is actually very open for patients being able to get a medical cannabis card in 4 days, walk into a dispensary. Now, one of the problems that they're having is you've got one grower that's been producing, I think another one just came online. But there's details that are actually upsetting the apple cart a little bit from the standpoint of the state selecting a system that's not necessarily working very well. And so the whole seed to sale tracking process is a little bit of a hodgepodge right now. I mean, patients are getting cannabis, but there's limited supply and there's tremendous demand. This is going to need to be a very carefully orchestrated process where you've got growers coming online, making sure that they've got all the barcodes and all the processes in place to be able to ship products. But this is going to be complicated. How do you plan on making sure that the Hoosiers, the state of Indiana, the people, the participants, are satisfied with a system that is delivering everything that's been promised?
Well, we have to, again, part of educating people is it's not a question of if, but when Indiana does adopt this. So, part of that is educating people is that, hey, there's going to be a learning curve here. To think that we're just going to, July 1st of hopefully, next year, 2019, Indiana adopts a medical cannabis program, that everything's just going to be, smooth running right from day one. There's going to be hiccups, but that's part of why I'm committed to, visiting states like, Pennsylvania and see what they're doing. If there's such a demand, okay, how do you control the supply side to meet that demand? And that's one of the things, I'm reaching out. I've already made great contacts with industry professionals, that have experience at the state level, but also national expertise as well. And I'll go around and find out, okay, we can see what Pennsylvania is doing wrong. How do you fix it? Okay, so that's a nice thing. That's a perfect example right there that you just brought up. So now we see, okay, all the positives they're doing. How do we take care of the negatives? And then we'll go to Illinois. Illinois has a nice program, and then other states working with the professionals. And one of mine would be, talking with people that I've earned their trust. I'll ask them, so, okay, what are the 5 best states that I should visit and why? And then give me 2 or 3 horrible states, that are just absolutely, seem to be stumbling step after step after step. And why is it that they're stumbling? And, what can we learn from that? And so once we get a handle on that, we can adopt best practices and apply that for our state and hopefully have a system that's starting, once it starts, we try to minimize those hiccups. So that's a challenge.
Well, that's great. And you know what? You've got some good information and data at your fingertips. Americans for Safe Access put out a report recently and graded all of medical cannabis states, giving them an A, B, C, D, E, or F based on their program and why they received those grades. So you'll have your 5 best states and your 5 worst states to take a look at, from that report.
Be careful there, Joseph. You're going to be on my call list if you you keep bringing that up. But okay, that right there, within just 1 minute of having a conversation, I learned something new. And now imagine, when I took that trip to Illinois for a couple days, that I felt like I was drinking from a fire hose, all the knowledge that was just coming at me and things I was learning. And so, every day that goes by, I become more and more confident in being able to bring a great program to Indiana. So yes, I'll be reaching out to people such as yourself and, trying to move the ball forward. So I appreciate that.
Well, fortunately, Illinois did score pretty high from the standpoint of quality of product. And, we have no insect legs, heavy metals, or pesticides in our products. So that part is a good thing. But the fact that we have 30,000 patients after 2 years, that puts a question in my mind on what are we doing wrong? Why can't more people, access medical cannabis in Illinois? But, that's
Sure.
something that, you can learn from. So what is the timeline, Jim, for this program coming to Indiana? What are you thinking?
Well, session starts, next session is January, but I'm in the House, so we run for election every 2 years. This is an election year, so hopefully I'll make it through the primary and then the fall election and then be able to come back next year. But I will have several pieces of legislation dealing with this issue. As long as I'm up there, it's not going away, not until we get it. We bring it to the people of Indiana, and even then, you have to stay vigilant so people don't come in and start tweaking it and messing up a good thing. So as soon as January of next year, I will be having something, more legislation coming at them, and I will be even better prepared, better educated, more knowledge, hopefully more people supporting the issue, reaching out and contacting their elected officials, telling them that, this is something they want. So I'm optimistic. I'm really looking forward to it. And as a Marine, I love a good fight. And I don't think there's any bigger fights, than on this issue, but I love being right in the middle of it. And it's something my heart is in. I believe in it 100%. And it's just something that we need to be doing.
Yeah, and just to quickly revisit, you did visit Illinois. You actually had a tour of a cultivation center, Cresco Labs, and then you also visited my dispensary, PDI Medical. We had many patients, doctors, and advocates there for you to question. Was there something in specific about the trip that you really found valuable that you took back to Indiana?
Oh, wow. Where would I start? There were so many good things about that trip, Joseph. One was the professionalism that I saw in the industry. I got to see it firsthand. I mean, you had medical professionals, people from the pharmaceutical industry growing it. The control, every plant was barcoded and tracked, from seed to sale. That was very impressive. The cleanliness of the cultivation facility and the dispensary, your dispensary was world class. It was top notch, as nice as anything that you would find in any medical facility today. The quality of the product, how it was dispensed, how the patients were treated. I actually got to talk to some patients there, and they were very impressed. But not just that, but the benefit of cannabis. We could dispense and create and manufacture widgets all day long, but if they don't serve that good of a purpose, okay, you're just dispensing and manufacturing widgets. But cannabis, when I got to talk to people that were being weaned completely off of prescription medication, and medication that had severe side effects for these people. And I'm not saying all prescription medications are bad. We all know that there's tremendous benefit to it, but cannabis, in my mind, is just another wonderful tool in the toolbox and should be an option that's available to people. It's not the end all be all for everybody, but when you look at the benefits of cannabis, the less side effects of cannabis compared to other drugs that we're taking, the combination, the whole entourage effect of the different strains of cannabis, which is pretty much limitless when, now that more and more states are adopting this and they're decriminalizing it, people are being innovative. As Americans are great, they're great at that. Just stay out of their way. And, you mentioned there were some issues in Illinois, the supply chain. My challenge as a legislator is to try and eliminate those bottlenecks from production to dispensing. I don't want any bottlenecks, or I want to minimize them as much as possible. But it's out there and it's exciting. This is a very exciting field to become a part of, and I'm really looking forward to it.
That's great, Jim. And one of the things that I'm seeing as a person who's running a dispensary is, we have patients coming in on polypharmacy that's, anywhere from 5 to 20 medications. And, oftentimes, and you said it yourself, that, medications certainly have a usefulness and have benefited, many people worldwide. But at the same time, there are failures, and oftentimes medical cannabis is the last hope for a lot of these people that are walking in that have basically used up every option they have from Western medicine and are looking at cannabis as something that's going to improve their quality of life and get them out of pain and just basically help them in their lives.
Yes, that's Joseph. You asked what impressed me, and one of the things in the cultivation facility was learning how safe cannabis is, compared to many other prescription medications that we're taking. And not even just prescription medication, like alcohol. When you compare cannabis to alcohol or cigarettes, things that we don't think, we don't give a second thought to in our everyday life, the safety factor of it. And the fact that it's been around and been used for thousands of years. And you mentioned Western medicine, I know Asia and Europe, they don't seem to have the stigma that we placed on it for whatever reason. But the nice thing is that stigma is dissipating, and it's thinning out more and more each day as people become more aware of the positive benefits, but just basically fed up with, I think, the intentional bad rap that cannabis has gotten throughout the years.
Exactly. So, exactly. Well, Jim, I think we're getting towards the end. I don't want to, take up too much more of your valuable time, but are you going to be putting in your hat to run for governor of Indiana?
Oh, I don't. That's way too early. I've got a lot to accomplish right now. I want to. This is fascinating. I love where I'm at. But before I ran for city council, people kind of scoffed, what are you doing getting into politics? But then I got city council, and then people asked, well, where are you going to go higher? And, the opportunity presented itself for that. And I ran for state, and I'm really good. But
same time, this is Joseph Friedman with the Medical Podcast, signing off.
Thanks for listening to the Medical Podcast, part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please help us by sharing the show on your LinkedIn, Twitter, and other social media networks. If you have healthcare-oriented questions or are a pharmacist or healthcare professional and want to learn more about medical cannabis, please reach out to our team by email. Send your message to medicalpodcast@gmail.com. The Medical Podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast. Seek all medical advice and/or treatment from a certified registered licensed physician and/or pharmacist. This is not legal advice. Seek out a knowledgeable lawyer about the subject. The Medical Podcast is for general information purposes to generate meaningful conversations about medical marijuana and is not an authority on the subject from a clinical or legal perspective.